Hello and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast for November 7th, 2024. This is episode 316. Stand-up comedian, actor, and improviser and dreamer, Paul Green coming to you. Sharing my journey, thoughts, and insights as I pursue my dreams in the hopes that perhaps you will pursue yours as well. I'm going audio again if you're watching this on YouTube, and that is because I still have my lighting kit at my fellow comedic partner, the one and only Josh Novi. And so I don't really have any lighting to do the video, which is fine. I am trying to be more vigilant in doing video podcasts instead of just audio for the YouTube portion, but that's where I'm at now. And I definitely had an interesting day yesterday. I had an opportunity to go be a guest on another podcast called Dating Exposed. And it's a podcast produced by two women in their 40s. And the podcast is about dating in your 40s. And I met both these women. They came to a comedy show that I was in a couple months ago over at JP's Comedy Club. And after the show, I always make it a point to talk to the audience as they leave, just to try to give them a card, ask them to follow me on social media and all of the things. And I ended up having a conversation with them, and they just seemed very fun and very energetic and lively. And when they said they had a podcast, I just said, I would love to be a guest on it. And yeah, I guess that I ended up being their first guest ever. So that was really, really fun, and had a very good conversation. And again, it's all about dating. So they were asking me, they wanted the male's perspective on dating, and, asked a lot of sort of typical questions that you would anticipate in regards to dating, like who's supposed to pay on the first date, and do you believe in having sex on the first date, and have you ever been catfished, and what kind of advice do you have? And and it was just a lot of fun. It's just a great experience to be able to support other content creators, other people out there putting content online, sharing their thoughts and feelings, and being vulnerable and all of those things, because it is a ton of work to produce a podcast. And they do a really great job. And I had a great time. And the last question they asked me was just sort of a general advice question in regards to dating. And, kind of put me on the spot. But when I thought about, what is the best piece of advice I could have for people in the dating market, whether it's in your 40s or any other time. And the more I thought about it after the fact, the more that I realized that, this is my advice for everybody, whether you're in a dating relationship or not, just in general. And that advice was that you need to learn to be happy internally before anybody externally is going to bring you any happiness. And I didn't word it this way at the time, but the more I thought about it after the podcast was, do not ever outsource your happiness. That happiness is always from within. And I know one of the many challenges in my life is that I didn't do that. I spent so much of my life assuming or expecting or hoping that something outside of myself was going to bring me the happiness and fulfillment that I was desiring internally. I was hoping that, I would find a relationship that made me happy, or a job that would make me happy, or a career, or a dream, or, finances, or whatever it was. And anytime I would have, a setback or a discouragement, then all of a sudden I would realize that I wasn't happy. I would get depressed. And we're like, why am I so depressed? Well, it took me a long, long time to discover that answer and find it out for myself, and to really turn my focus to implementing that philosophy in my life. And that is simply that happiness, or I don't want to say you can't do it, but if you do try to outsource your happiness, or the supply of your happiness, or if you are seeking happiness from any external circumstance or person or status or whatever it is, that happiness is probably not going to last. At least that's been the case in my life. And if I am constantly waiting until I get a certain thing, once I get a certain job, or a certain amount of money, or a certain relationship, or a certain opportunity as a comedian, or whatever it is, that then I will be happy because this thing has happened. I am learning more and more that that is just not the case. And there are plenty of people who are in a relationship, or plenty of people who have lots of money or have lots of success, who are just as miserable as anybody else. And so that idea of not outsourcing happiness, I think, is really important to me as I continue to pursue this dream, because now I have to confront myself on my own philosophy, which is, do I think that once I get this dream that I will be happy? Or what do I think that that's going to do for me? And why am I pursuing it so passionately? And does that pursuit is that maybe an indication that there's something lacking internally with me that I'm seeking externally? And I don't have an answer to that just yet, but it has caused me to give some pause and go, what is it that I'm really seeking? I do this podcast, I'm pursuing comedy, I'm trying to produce shows, growing my social media, writing new material, auditioning, taking opportunities when they're given to me to network and to connect and to market myself and advertise, and but why really? And it's really something that I'm starting to think deeper about. Like, what is the why underneath the why? It's like, oh well, I'm pursuing this because I have a dream and it's in my heart. But it's like, okay, but why? And what do you expect to happen when you get that dream? Or am I pursuing this because I feel some sort of void internally that I'm expecting this dream to fill? And I think there might be some truth to that. And again, I've really had to start questioning my own motivations, which is ironic because, I go and do this podcast and they ask me for my advice. And so I give this advice. And then I've spent the whole day thinking about, wait, am I taking my own advice here? um, and I think to some degree I am. I can definitely say that the more that I realized that my happiness indeed is a choice and it's internal, and that the things that are happening to me or around me, there's always an opportunity for me to take responsibility for myself and to make decisions and to act and to pursue. And the more that I realize that and again realize that my happiness is internal, it was a really big shift in my life. And I stopped getting depressed all the time. It's like when I was constantly seeking for some sort of external source of happiness, I was miserable all the time and depressed and unhappy and discouraged and disappointed. And it's like, well, how could I not be? Because I was operating under my opinion, under a false philosophy, which is once I get, then I will be happy. And that once I get can be anything, because it's different for different people. So learning to be happy and to feel happiness and to feel fulfillment and to feel joy right now in this moment, regardless of anything else going on around me, that to me is the best advice I could give myself, which I'm not even taking my own advice some of the time. So this is not a do as I do. This is a do as I say, but I'm working on it. And now when I really think about my, this dream that I have pursuing comedy, when I really envision it, I'm actually not envisioning me being any different. I'm actually envisioning me being more or less the same. It's just that the circumstances changed. Instead of doing comedy for 100 people, I'm doing comedy for 500 people, who all paid money to buy tickets to see me. But when I'm on that stage and I'm performing, I'm still the same. And it's still fulfilling and it's still joyful to me. And I was talking to, who was it? I can't think of who I was talking to. It was very recently, though. It might have been when I was at the Desert Ridge Improv and I was talking to their staff over there. Because we were talking about how you have to sell a minimum amount of tickets. Otherwise, the venue will cancel the show because it just doesn't make sense to them to, pay the staff to be there and stuff if there isn't enough people buying drinks and all of that. And I was just talking about, hey, how I totally understand that and how I, a buddy of mine had his show canceled because they didn't have enough tickets and stuff. And I'm going like, I totally get that as a venue, but as a performer, I do not care how many people are in the audience. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I was actually talking about this on the podcast today. Maybe that's why it's so fresh in my mind. But I just mentioned how I don't care how many people are in the audience. I don't care if it's one person or 1,000. I'm still going to show up and do my absolute best to provide the best possible entertainment to anybody who wants to see me, who pay to buy a ticket to see a comedy show. Because my whole philosophy is if I can't be happy and fulfilled performing for one person, sure as heck I'm not going to be fulfilled and happy performing for 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000. So might as well get happy now and get fulfilled now and do that all internally. Not that external factors, aren't a thing. I'm not trying to discount that, but I am definitely a strong believer that if one decides to outsource their happiness, or if they are seeking happiness outside of themselves, that is probably a philosophy for some unhappiness and some depression and a lot of discouragement, because that's what it was for me. So everybody, to me, it's some of the greatest news ever. Like, our happiness is our choice. It's internal, and we can experience it anytime. And I hope that all of you are experiencing some happiness, some joy and fulfillment in your lives as you pursue your dreams. All right, everybody, I'm going to cut this one a little short, but that is my podcast for today, November 7th, 2024, episode 316 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. I hope you're all doing well. I love you all so much, and I will talk to you tomorrow.